Hello from Team Pacific Tuna Points, consisting of Kate, Stefania, and Kyle, with our wonderful mentor Rafi and sponsor Bernie. First day of class. We'll be using a mission model canvas to help you plan your journey. Well, what's that? We learned that a mission model canvas is a valuable tool to describe how an organization delivers a solution that satisfies the actual needs of customers. Okay, let's fill it out. But wait, we have no idea what we're doing. We need to get out of the building and learn from people on the ground. First, we had to figure out what is bycatch, but we quickly learned that defining bycatch is not so simple. While many groups focus bycatch on endangered and charismatic creatures like dolphins, turtles, and seabirds, people we talked to encourage us to think more broadly and include things like invertebrates, other fish, and creatures tossed overboard because they just don't have market value. Why does this matter? Because all bycatch impacts the ocean ecosystem in various ways. When we mess with the balance of a species in an ecosystem, the ecosystem is at risk of collapsing, which in turn can have negative economic impacts on the fisheries. Second, we focused on how the bycatch gets caught. While there are a handful of different fishing methods used in commercial tuna fishing, we focused on longlining because longlining had the second most total bycatch for fish, invertebrates, and mammals, and had the most total bycatch for seabirds and sea turtles between 2010 and 2015 in NOAA's National Bycatch Database. Lastly, we focused on why is it happening. We learned that the primary reason fishermen aren't fishing sustainably is that it costs money. When fishermen change fishing methods, there's a learning curve which causes their catch to decrease temporarily. Currently, there are no incentives for them to change their methods, except in areas where it is the law. Our solution aims to create incentives for fishermen to move to more sustainable fishing methods, such as using circle hooks to avoid sea turtle bycatch, weighting down the fishing line to avoid seabird bycatch, and using an electronic monitoring system to record accurate data of all the target species and bycatch brought on board. Our final mission model canvas shows that our target beneficiaries are local fishermen, e-monitoring companies, and research and conservation groups, while our primary partner is the Pacific Fishery Management Council. All right, so as you heard, we're Team Pacific Tuna Points, with myself, Kyle, Kate, and Stefania. We also have our mentor, Rafi. Yep. So in the beginning, we started with a challenge. We needed to reduce bycatch while maintaining the fishers' profits, all within current regulatory frameworks. Quickly, we started out really not knowing anything. We come from a diverse background, but none of us had a lot of ideas about how to approach this. So we started investigating the landscape, and we quickly learned some interesting things, including that fishermen actually have a vested interest in keeping the ocean healthy. Also, many boats have 24/7 independent observers put on by government agencies that keep track of the bycatch and target catch that they bring on board. And then we also learned that California has some of the most sustainable and well-regulated fisheries anywhere. So because of that, we did our first pivot. Along with some other feedback we got from other folks, we decided that since California fisheries are already well regulated, we should focus more on artisanal fisheries outside of California because there may be more progress to be made there. After more research and talking to more people, we learned that there's actually some perverse incentives in the system as it currently is that encourage fishermen to dump bycatch overboard, and that doesn't necessarily help the ecosystem because we are targeting such specific species. We also learned that bycatch itself is a very Western idea. The fishers in other countries actually think of all the catch they bring in as valuable material that should be helping humans. But eventually, we decided to get rid of this MVP because, especially in countries like the US and all around the world, we just don't have the data on bycaught species. So if we were to try to sell these bycaught species, we might actually end up fishing them to extinction, and nobody's researching them, so we wouldn't even know. But then we realized that the fisheries that are in California are so well regulated, that might actually make them a better place to do pilots and regulations. And so we actually reverse pivoted to work in the California fisheries because we're more likely to find solutions there.
So we realized that we needed to narrow down our fishery after choosing a geographical location. And we looked at various fisheries, however, settled on the longline commercial tuna fishery. And we chose this because it's a high value fishery, which there's a lot of demand and a lot of people care about it, but there's also a lot of recorded bycatch. It's far from artisanal, but it has such a large impact and a lot of money behind it that we had to follow along with this new idea. So with our new focus, we started interviewing and we found out some really interesting details. Bycatch is not inherently a problem by itself, but the bycatch mortality is. And the observed bycatch mortality often happens as fishermen bring the catch on deck. The data is very piecemeal and it can take months for it to turn into management decisions. So we came up with two possible solutions to combine as an MVP, which would be to make a gear modification that would release bycatch before it comes on deck while requiring more onboard monitoring to fill the huge lack of data that there is. So then we learned that long lines that are used in the tuna stretch for tens of miles and hang in the water for hours to days, and in that time the fish could die, and many things die just on the hook before they even get to the boat. So creating a gear modification to release caught fish would not have a positive impact on reducing the bycatch mortality. The Pacific tuna fisheries that we were looking at is managed by two RFMOs, which are regional fishery management organizations, and they have been trying and failing for years to implement 100% onboard monitoring due to a lack of interest from the international countries that they have to work with. So after this, we were feeling pretty stuck and out of options, and it was a really difficult week for us, but we continued to do interviews and try and get some direction from our beneficiaries. And bycatch has existed for years, and there hasn't been a catch-all solution created yet. So we met with our sponsor, Bernie, and had a really good brainstorming session, and he helped us out a lot. We went back and forth on a lot of things, but landed on our point-based contest idea. So we had a new direction and a new MVP where we would incentivize fishermen to use sustainable fishing methods. This works with the fishermen by allowing them to choose how they want to fish, since policies force change and they're more likely to fight back. Our program does not involve a stick regulation, but rather rewards fishermen who practice sustainable fishing and reduce their bycatch. So the question became, how would this work? We had to come up with a list of ways for fishermen to earn points, which changed slightly throughout our journey. We hypothesized that we could realistically be successful in the longline tuna fishery and came up with these list of actions. We also had to figure out what incentives fishermen actually want. Most fishermen are very financially driven, is what we heard from fishermen themselves as well as other people we interviewed. We also considered what's realistic and relevant to the fishery we chose, and we got a lot of different suggestions, which made it really hard for us to narrow down our ideas. We started getting positive feedback on this MVP around week 6, and we were told, a lot of people told us our idea was great. Specifically, they said it's a great starting point because it's worth investing in and no one has really done it. So we understood that this would not work in all fisheries, but based on what the experts told us, longline tuna would be a good place to test our MVP. And we were also told that direct rewards are the best way to motivate fishermen to make changes. We also got some feedback that wasn't quite as positive, and some people said this system wouldn't work. Some people said our incentives were already naturally ingrained in the fishery, so they wouldn't work. But we heard that a lot of it had to do with the current political and social system that would not support a program like this, which is why we made our program voluntary.
So based on some of the comments and suggestions we've received from our interviews, we removed some actions and incentives from our MVP. For example, we ended up removing dynamic ocean management because currently these tools are not available for the tuna industry at the level that we would require them. And we also discovered that license fees for fishermen are only $20 every other year. So waiving the fee would not be motivating enough for fishermen to make large changes that we were asking them to make. And in order to know whether our incentives are strong enough, we tracked down some fishermen who would be willing to talk to us. Unfortunately, this is really difficult due to COVID-19 and the fact that these fishermen are very busy and most are a little wary of students trying to impose more regulations on their industry. However, we did find some, and the ones we were able to talk to for the most part really liked our idea because it was more of a carrot approach, meaning that they were rewarded for good behavior instead of punished for bad behavior. So we're hoping to create a pilot program that we would run out of San Diego. We chose this fishery because it's a very small and we could be in constant contact with all the fishermen, giving us much better feedback. We would also be able to regularly monitor the fishermen that make sure they are following our guidelines. And before we would implement the pilot program, we would host a few workshops for the local fishermen in order to gain their support and educate them on our program and see if there's any last minute adjustments we need to make to it before we begin implementing it. Based on our calculations done for a week 8 presentation, we calculated that it would cost around $83,730 in order to begin designing and implementing this program. We also found some 3 private foundations that would be willing to invest in our type of program based on the types of programs that they've invested in the past. Our key partner would be the Pacific Fishery Management Council. They authorize the exempted fishing permits, which allow us to make exclusive access work as an incentive for our program. And without their partnership, we wouldn't be able to continue working on this program in Southern California. So the goal of our program would be to reduce bycatch within the commercial tuna fish longlining fishery, and it would also improve fisher profits, and it would make it a more sustainable fishery. In the future, once we have a program that is successful in Southern California and has the support of the local fishermen, we hope to scale up the program and implement it across the US and internationally. So just a quick thank you to our mentor, Rafi, and our sponsor, Bernie. They were a huge help in directing us through this course. So yeah, thank you.